I couldn't believe my twin sister would do this to me. When the doctor told me I'd never carry a child, my entire identity shattered. But Lily, my mirror image, my other half, offered to be our surrogate. It felt like a miracle, like the universe was finally showing me some mercy after months of humiliation and grief. We signed contracts. We followed every legal step. And for 9 beautiful months, I watched my daughter grow inside the person I trusted most. Then I came home early one afternoon and caught them, my husband, my sister, and my parents, planning to keep my baby and push me out of the picture entirely. The betrayal was so shocking, so calculated, that I almost broke right there. But here's the secret they didn't know. While they were busy playing happy family and justifying their infidelity with talk of what's best for the child, I was reading every line of that surrogacy contract they'd forgotten about. They thought they'd exposed my weakness and won. They thought wrong. What happened next wasn't revenge born from rage. It was justice wrapped in legal documents, delivered with surgical precision at the exact moment they felt most secure. And when I walked out of that hospital with my daughter in my arms, leaving them with nothing but child support bills and shattered delusions, they finally understood the truth. You don't backstab someone and expect them to stay down. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. This is the story of how I reclaimed everything they tried to steal, and why they'll be paying for it. Literally, for the next 18 years. I still remember the exact moment my world collapsed. The doctor's words felt like they were coming from underwater. Something about my ovaries, about scarring, about how pregnancy wasn't going to happen for me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My entire life, I'd imagined myself as a mother. That wasn't just a dream. It was my identity, the core of who I thought I'd become. And in one sterile room, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, that future died. The weeks after the diagnosis were the darkest I'd ever known. I'd wake up and forget for just a second. Then reality would crash down like a wave. Betrayal. That's what it felt like. My own body backstabbing me. Every baby announcement, every pregnancy reveal felt like the universe was mocking me personally. I withdrew from everyone, even Jake, my husband, who kept trying to hold me together. But how could he understand? This wasn't happening to him. Depression wrapped around me like a heavy blanket I couldn't kick off. I stopped going out, stopped answering calls from my twin sister Lily, stopped pretending I was okay. Jake finally convinced me to see a therapist, and honestly, I only went because I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. Those sessions were brutal, facing the grief, the loss, the shattered dreams, but slowly, painfully, something began to shift. My therapist asked me one question that changed everything. Is motherhood only possible one way? That question planted a seed I wasn't ready to acknowledge yet. For months, I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I couldn't see what might still be possible. Jake started researching alternatives: adoption, surrogacy, fostering. At first, I shut down every conversation. It felt like admitting defeat, like accepting that my original dream was truly dead. But he was patient, leaving articles on the counter, gently sharing stories of families built differently. And one night, exhausted from fighting reality, I finally let myself consider it. We started looking into surrogacy, with the kind of desperate hope that feels dangerous. The process seemed overwhelming: agencies, legal contracts, finding someone we could trust with something so precious. The cost alone was staggering, and every consultation felt like another reminder of what should have been natural. But Jake held my hand through every meeting, every decision. For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. It wasn't quite hope yet, more like a fragile possibility that maybe, just maybe, I could still become the mother I'd always dreamed of being. Then Lily called, and everything I thought I knew about hope was about to change completely. My twin sister, my other half, the person who'd known me since before we were born, said she wanted to talk about something important. The tone in her voice was different. Excited, nervous, purposeful. I had no idea that her next words would set everything in motion, that they'd lead me down a path I never could have imagined. What she was about to offer felt like a miracle. the answer to every prayer I'd whispered into the darkness. When Lily sat down across from me that afternoon, I could see she'd been thinking about this for a while. Her hands were trembling slightly as she reached for mine, and there were tears in her eyes before she even started speaking. "I want to carry your baby," she said, and the world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My twin sister, offering to give me the one thing I thought I'd lost forever. It felt like divine intervention, like karma finally working in my favor after months of suffering. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. Of all the potential surrogates we'd researched, none of them felt right. They were strangers, unknowns, people I'd have to trust with the most precious thing in my life. But Lily, she was my twin, my mirror, the person who'd shared a womb with me before we even understood what life was. If I couldn't carry my own child, having her do it felt like the next best thing. It was almost poetic in a way. The baby would grow inside someone who shared my DNA, my history, my entire existence. Jake was cautious at first, worried about mixing family and something so legally complex. But even he couldn't deny how perfect it seemed. Lily had 2 healthy kids already, easy pregnancies both times, and she genuinely wanted to do this for us. We sat down together, the 3 of us, and talked through everything. The medical procedures, the legal contracts, the emotional boundaries. She kept saying she wanted to give back, that watching me suffer had broken her heart too. I felt so much dignity returning to me in those conversations, like I was reclaiming a future I thought had been stolen. The legal process was intense, but we did everything by the book. Contracts were signed, lawyers reviewed every clause, medical evaluations were completed. Lily signed away all parental rights before the procedure even happened. It was standard for surrogacy, protecting everyone involved. I remember feeling so grateful, so humbled by her sacrifice. She was going to go through 9 months of pregnancy, all the discomfort and risk, just so I could finally become a mother. The truth is, I'd never felt closer to anyone in my entire life. When the embryo transfer succeeded and Lily's pregnancy test came back positive, I sobbed for hours. But this time, they were tears of joy, of vindication, of a justice I felt the universe owed me. We celebrated together. Me, Jake, Lily, even my parents who were thrilled about another grandchild. Lily moved into our guest room so I could be part of every moment. Every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, every milestone. I was there for the morning sickness, the first kicks, the cravings at midnight. It felt like we were doing this together, like she was lending me her body to create my dream. Those months were some of the happiest of my life, watching my baby grow inside my sister. I documented everything, prepared the nursery, read parenting books late into the night. Jake seemed lighter too, more present, already planning what kind of father he'd be. Lily glowed with pregnancy, constantly reassuring me that she felt honored to do this, that seeing my joy made every moment worth it. I thought I finally understood what people meant when they talked about family loyalty, about unconditional love. I had no idea that underneath all that warmth, something dark was already taking root. The pregnancy progressed beautifully, and by month 7, everything felt surreal in the best way possible. Lily's belly had grown round and full, and every time I placed my hand there and felt my daughter kick, I'd cry. My daughter. I'd started calling her that, claiming her in every way that mattered. We'd chosen the name together, picked out tiny clothes, assembled the crib that now sat waiting in the nursery. Jake would come home from work and immediately check on both of us, asking about Lily's comfort and the baby's movements. It felt like we were this perfect little unit, all working toward the same beautiful goal. I'd taken leave from my job to be fully present for these final weeks. Every morning, I'd make Lily breakfast, whatever she was craving, and we'd sit together planning the birth, talking about what kind of mother I wanted to be. She'd share advice from her own experiences, laughing about the chaos of newborns and sleepless nights. My parents visited constantly, bringing gifts and offering to help once the baby arrived. Everyone seemed so invested, so excited. I felt humiliated thinking back to those dark months when I'd believed motherhood was impossible for me. Look how wrong I'd been. The baby shower was incredible, filled with family and close friends celebrating this journey. Lily sat beside me as I opened gifts, her hand resting on her belly, smiling at everyone's well wishes. People kept commenting on how amazing it was that my twin was doing this for me, how it showed the true meaning of sisterly love. I agreed, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. This was it, my redemption arc, my happy ending after all the pain, revenge against the infertility diagnosis that had tried to define me, payback for all those months of suffering. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed, little moments that should have raised red flags but didn't, because I was too consumed with joy. The way Jake and Lily would sometimes stop talking when I entered a room, how my parents seemed overly interested in Jake's opinions about parenting decisions, the occasional glance between them that lasted just a second too long. But I was blinded by trust, by the assumption that family meant safety. I couldn't believe anything could be wrong when everything felt so right. 3 weeks before the due date, I decided to leave work early one afternoon. I'd been at a final meeting, tying up loose ends before my maternity leave officially started. The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway, but I noticed both my parents' car and Jake's car there. Odd, since he usually didn't come home until 6. I walked in through the front door, expecting maybe a surprise or last-minute planning session. Instead, I heard voices coming from the living room, serious and low, the kind of tone people use when discussing something they don't want others to overhear. I stood in the hallway, frozen, as fragments of conversation drifted toward me. My father's voice, "It's better this way, more stable." My mother, "She'll understand eventually, once she sees reason." Jake, "The baby deserves to be with her biological parents." And then Lily, her voice thick with emotion, "I know it's hard, but we're doing the right thing." My heart stopped beating. Every word felt like a betrayal so profound I couldn't process it. What were they talking about? What decision were they making without me? I stepped into the doorway, and 4 faces turned toward me with expressions I'll never forget. Guilt, shock, and something worse, pity. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, staring at the 4 people I trusted most in the world, and demanded to know what was happening. Jake stood up first, his face pale but determined, and said we needed to talk. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled away, feeling betrayal coursing through my veins like ice water. Lily wouldn't meet my eyes, her hand protectively cradling the belly that held my daughter. My father cleared his throat and said they'd all been discussing what was best for the child. And that's when I knew with absolute certainty that they were planning to take my baby from me. Jake explained it calmly, rationally, like he was presenting a business proposal. He said that over the past few months, he and Lily had developed feelings for each other, that they hadn't meant for it to happen, but now they couldn't deny it. That since Lily was carrying the baby and he was the biological father, it made sense for them to raise the child together. My parents nodded along, adding that Lily had experience as a mother, that she'd bonded with the baby during pregnancy, that I was still healing from my infertility diagnosis. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was family drama torn straight from my worst nightmares, except it was real, and it was happening to me. The room spun as they continued talking, justifying, rationalizing. They'd thought about this carefully, they said. They didn't want to hurt me, but they had to think about what was right. Lily finally spoke, tears streaming down her face, saying she never meant to fall for Jake, but the pregnancy had brought them closer. She talked about how she felt connected to the baby, how it didn't feel right to just hand her over anymore. The words payback and vengeance didn't even begin to describe what I felt. This was annihilation, a complete backstabbing by everyone who was supposed to protect me. I wanted to scream, to rage, to physically fight for what was mine, but something stopped me. Maybe shock, maybe survival instinct. Instead, I asked one question. What about the contract? Jake had the audacity to look uncomfortable then. He said they'd discussed it with a lawyer, that surrogacy contracts could be challenged under certain circumstances, especially when the surrogate was biologically related. My mother added gently that fighting would be expensive and traumatic for everyone, especially the baby. They were asking me, no, telling me, to just accept this, to let them play happy family with my daughter while I walked away with nothing. I left the room without another word, went upstairs to the bedroom I shared with Jake, and locked the door. For hours I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, trying to process the shocking magnitude of what had just happened. My husband had cheated on me emotionally, and possibly physically, with my twin sister. My sister was stealing my baby. My parents were supporting them. Everything I'd built, everything I'd hoped for, had been a lie. The humiliation was crushing, the sense of lied to and betrayed so complete that I couldn't even cry. But then, as night fell and the house grew quiet, something shifted inside me. The grief began to crystallize into something harder, sharper. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder where I'd saved all our surrogacy documents. The contract Lily had signed, the medical records, the emails, the legal agreements. I started reading, really reading, with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. And that's when I saw it. The details they'd apparently forgotten. The protections that had been put in place. The legal framework that didn't care about feelings or new relationships. A plan began forming in my mind, cold and precise. They thought I'd just accept this. They had no idea what they'd awakened in me. The next morning, Jake came to the bedroom with divorce papers already prepared. The speed of it was insulting. He'd clearly been planning this for weeks, maybe months, while I'd been blissfully decorating a nursery. He set them on the dresser and said he hoped we could handle this maturely, that he'd be fair with the division of assets. Fair. That word almost made me laugh. There was nothing fair about what they were doing to me. Nothing just about this betrayal. But I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I picked up the papers, scanned through them quickly, and signed every page without hesitation. Jake looked relieved, probably expecting a massive fight. He actually thanked me for being reasonable, said he knew this was hard, but I was handling it with dignity. I nodded, staying calm, even managing a small smile. Inside, I was a completely different person than I'd been 24 hours ago. The woman who'd sobbed over infertility, who'd been so grateful for scraps of hope, who'd trusted blindly. She was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone focused, someone who understood that justice wouldn't come from tears or pleas. It would come from being smarter than them, more patient, more strategic. I moved out within 3 days, taking only my personal belongings and leaving everything baby-related behind. My parents called, trying to smooth things over, saying they hoped we could all still be family after some time passed. I was polite, distant, told them I needed space to process. Lily texted constantly, long messages about how sorry she was, how she never meant to hurt me, how she hoped I'd eventually understand. I responded minimally, never engaging emotionally, never giving them anything to use against me later. Everyone seemed to think I'd broken, that I was retreating to lick my wounds in private. But I wasn't healing. I was planning. I found a lawyer who specialized in surrogacy contracts and reproductive law. Someone with a reputation for being absolutely ruthless. I brought her every document, every email, every text message. She read through the contract Lily had signed and actually smiled. "This is ironclad," she said. "Your sister signed away all parental rights before conception even occurred. Legally, she's a gestational carrier, nothing more. The baby is yours." I asked about Jake's rights, and she explained that as the intended mother in a surrogacy agreement, I had equal standing. More importantly, Lily couldn't just decide to keep the baby because she'd changed her mind. That wasn't how the law worked. We crafted a strategy with the precision of a military operation. I would wait. Let them believe they'd won. Let them get comfortable in their fantasy. No confrontations, no threats. Nothing that could be used to paint me as unstable or vindictive. Meanwhile, we'd monitor every doctor's appointment, every medical record, building a timeline. My lawyer filed preliminary motions quietly, getting emergency custody orders prepared but not yet executed. The key was timing. We needed to act after the birth, when Lily's biological connection was at its peak emotionally, but legally meant nothing. When they'd least expect it, and had no time to mount a defense, I rented a small apartment across town and settled into a strange, suspended existence. Days passed, then weeks. Lily's due date approached, and my phone buzzed with updates from my mother. She'd gone into labor. The baby was coming. Did I want to be there? I said no, that it was too painful, that I needed to respect their new family. I could almost hear the relief in my mother's voice. They thought I'd given up, that I'd accepted my place as the shamed outsider. What they didn't know was that I was already in motion, that every piece was positioned exactly where it needed to be, and that the truth they'd hidden behind their justifications was about to collide with the law in the most shocking way possible. The call came at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday. Lily had given birth to a healthy baby girl, 7 pounds, perfect in every way. My mother's voice was thick with emotion, describing how beautiful she was, how much she looked like our family. She said Jake and Lily were exhausted but overjoyed, already acting like the devoted parents they'd planned to be. Part of me wanted to feel something. Grief, rage, even jealousy. But I'd spent weeks preparing for this exact moment, and all I felt was cold, crystalline focus. I thanked her for letting me know, said I was happy everyone was healthy, and hung up. Then I called my lawyer. Within an hour, we were moving. She'd already prepared all the documentation, the surrogacy contract with Lily's signed waiver of parental rights, proof of my legal status as the intended mother, medical records showing my genetic material in the embryo, everything needed for emergency custody. We drove to the hospital just as the sun was rising, and I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was it. The payback they never saw coming. The vengeance wrapped in legal documents instead of screaming matches. They'd used my trust against me, and now I was about to use their arrogance against them. We arrived at the maternity ward with a hospital security escort and legal papers in hand. My lawyer presented the emergency custody order to the nurses' station, and I watched their faces shift from confusion to professional concern. The head nurse made a call, and within minutes, hospital administration was involved. They had no choice but to follow the law, regardless of what emotional drama was unfolding. I could hear raised voices down the hall. Jake's, my mother's, Lily's weak protests from her recovery room, but none of that mattered anymore. The law was on my side, and it didn't care about their feelings or their betrayal. When they brought my daughter to me, wrapped in a hospital blanket, I finally felt something crack in the armor I'd built. She was perfect. Dark hair, tiny fingers, absolutely perfect. The nurse placed her in my arms, checked my ID against the legal documents, and confirmed I was authorized to take custody. Behind me, I could hear my family arriving, their voices escalating from shock to anger. Jake was yelling about rights, about biology, about how this couldn't be legal. My lawyer calmly explained that Lily had signed a binding contract, that as a gestational surrogate she had no legal claim, and that I was leaving with my daughter whether they accepted it or not. The scene that followed was chaos. My mother crying, my father demanding to speak to lawyers, Lily sobbing from her hospital bed begging me not to do this. Jake's face had gone from confident to panicked, the reality crashing down that he'd severely underestimated me. He tried to block the door, said I was being cruel, that I was punishing them by taking an innocent baby. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, I'm reclaiming what's mine. You thought my dignity was something you could just take, that I'd roll over because you decided to backstab me. But karma doesn't care about your new relationship or your justifications. The truth is, you never had any legal right to her." As hospital security escorted us out, I heard Lily screaming my name, begging me to stop, saying she'd carried that baby for 9 months. My lawyer didn't even break stride, just kept walking, explaining to security that everything was by the book and legal. I held my daughter close, feeling the weight of her in my arms, and for the first time in months, I felt whole again. They'd thought they could humiliate me, throw me away like I was nothing, rebuild their lives on the ruins of mine. But they'd forgotten one critical thing. I'd learned from them, and I'd learned to be patient, strategic, and absolutely merciless when justice demanded it. The legal fallout was swift and brutal. Within 48 hours, Jake received notification that he owed child support, substantial monthly payments for a child he'd assumed would be living with him. My lawyer had calculated everything down to the last dollar. Medical expenses, child care, future education costs. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd planned to be a father, just not a paying one from a distance. His attempts to negotiate were shut down immediately. The contract was clear. I had sole custody, and his biological connection meant he had financial obligations whether he liked it or not. Watching him realize the reality of what revenge actually looked like was oddly satisfying. Lily tried to file for custody within a week, claiming emotional duress, claiming she'd bonded with the baby during pregnancy, claiming the contract should be voided. Her lawyer probably told her she had a chance, fed her hope the same way she'd fed me false promises. But my attorney demolished every argument in court. The judge reviewed the surrogacy contract, noted that Lily had undergone psychological evaluation and legal counseling before signing, and ruled that a surrogate changing her mind after birth wasn't grounds to overturn a valid agreement. The gavel came down, and with it, any fantasy Lily had of keeping my daughter. I couldn't believe how thoroughly the system protected what was right when you had the documentation to back it up. My parents tried a different approach, grandparents' rights. They hired their own lawyer, arguing they deserved visitation, that cutting them off was harmful to their granddaughter. But grandparents' rights are tricky, and in cases where the parent is fit and capable, they rarely succeed. My lawyer presented evidence of their conspiracy, their support of Jake and Lily's betrayal, their willingness to participate in taking my child from me. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Grandparents' rights exist to protect children from being unfairly separated from loving family members, not to reward people who'd actively participated in traumatizing the child's mother. Another case dismissed, another door closed on their attempts to stay in our lives. The financial pressure on Jake and Lily's new relationship was immense. Child support payments, legal fees from their failed custody attempts, the cost of Lily's medical care that insurance didn't cover. It added up fast. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were fighting constantly, that the stress was destroying whatever connection they thought they'd built. Turns out, a relationship born from infidelity and betrayal doesn't have a strong foundation when karma comes calling. Jake resented the payments. Lily resented that her sacrifice meant nothing legally, and they both resented me for not playing the victim they'd expected me to be. Their families turned on them too. Lily's ex-husband heard about the situation and filed to modify custody of their 2 kids, arguing that her judgment was questionable. Some of their friends distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the level of backstabbing involved. Social media whispers painted them as the villains in a shocking story of family drama gone wrong. They'd thought they were making a brave choice for love, but the court of public opinion was less forgiving. Every consequence they faced felt like justice, finally balancing the scales, like the universe acknowledging that what they'd done to me wasn't just morally wrong, it was legally indefensible. Watching their perfect plan crumble was its own form of closure. They'd been so confident, so sure that biology and emotion would trump legal contracts and intended parenthood. But the law exists for exactly these situations, to protect people who plan and prepare and do things the right way. I'd signed contracts, I'd followed procedures, I'd documented everything. And when they tried to steal my future, those boring legal details became my weapon. The humiliated, broken woman they'd dismissed was gone. In her place was a mother, a survivor, and someone who'd learned that real vengeance doesn't come from screaming or begging. It comes from being smarter, colder, and absolutely unshakable when everything you love is on the line. 6 months after bringing my daughter home, I moved to a different city entirely. There was nothing left for me in that town except painful memories and people who'd proven they couldn't be trusted. I found a job with better pay, a small house with a yard, and started building a life that belonged only to us. Every morning, I'd wake up to her soft breathing in the nursery next door, and I'd feel this overwhelming sense of reclaiming everything they'd tried to take. This was my second chance, my fresh start, and nobody could touch it anymore. The restraining orders I'd filed meant Jake, Lily, and my parents couldn't contact me directly. They tried, of course. Emails to my old address, calls to disconnected numbers, messages through friends I'd already cut off. But I was done. They'd burned that bridge so thoroughly there was nothing left to salvage. My daughter would grow up knowing the truth when she was old enough to understand it. But for now, she'd grow up surrounded by chosen family, friends who'd supported me, co-workers who'd become confidants, and a community that didn't know our shocking history. That anonymity was a gift I hadn't expected. I started therapy again, but this time it wasn't about depression or loss. It was about processing betrayal, rebuilding self-worth, and learning to trust again after the people closest to me had conspired to destroy me. My therapist said I'd shown remarkable resilience, that many people would have crumbled under that level of family drama and backstabbing. I told her I didn't feel resilient. I felt hollowed out and rebuilt, like I'd died and come back as someone fundamentally different. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the old version of me was too trusting, too willing to believe that blood meant loyalty. Financial independence became my new focus. I saved aggressively, invested carefully, built security that didn't depend on anyone else. Jake's child support payments came like clockwork. My lawyer had set up automatic withdrawal, so he couldn't even play games with late payments. That money went straight into a college fund for my daughter. Every deposit felt like a small victory, a reminder that justice wasn't just emotional, it was practical. He'd wanted to be a father without consequences, and instead, he was funding a future he'd never be part of. My daughter started daycare, then preschool, surrounded by normalcy. Teachers who knew nothing about surrogacy contracts or family betrayal, just a happy little girl being raised by a devoted single mom. I volunteered for field trips, hosted playdates, became part of the PTA. These mundane activities felt revolutionary after everything we'd been through. Nobody looked at me with pity or whispered about what had happened. I was just another parent doing my best. And that dignity, that simple, everyday dignity, meant everything. Sometimes I'd think about them, Jake, Lily, my parents, and wonder if they ever understood what they'd really done. They'd thought they were following their hearts, making the right choice for everyone involved. But they'd forgotten that I was a person too, with dreams and rights, and a will that didn't break just because they wanted it to. The truth they learned too late was that underestimating someone's capacity for strategic payback is a fatal mistake. I didn't need to destroy them personally. I just needed to let their own choices, amplified by legal consequences and social judgment, do that work for me. And as I tucked my daughter into bed each night, reading stories and planning tomorrows, I realized I'd gotten everything that mattered. They got exactly what they deserved. So that's my story. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me, and the justice that rebuilt me from the ground up. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been backstabbed by someone you trusted completely? Maybe a family member, a partner, or someone you never thought could hurt you that deeply. How did you handle it? Did you fight back, walk away, or find some middle ground? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories matter. And here's what I really want to know. Do you think I went too far? Or do you think they got exactly what they deserved? Was this revenge? Or was this just reclaiming what was rightfully mine? The line between justice and payback can be razor thin, and I'm curious where you think I landed. Share your perspective, your experiences with family drama, infidelity, or fighting for your dignity when everyone expected you to just accept defeat. Let's talk about it. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, feel, or recognize something in your own life, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. I share real stories about betrayal, survival, and the kind of justice that doesn't make headlines but changes everything. These aren't fairy tales with easy answers. They're raw, complicated, and deeply human experiences that deserve to be heard. So subscribe, stay connected, and let's keep having these conversations that matter. I'll see you in the next one.